History is not a straight line. It is a wheel. If you could travel back to the year 180 AD, standing in the heart of Rome, you would find yourself surrounded by the wealthiest, most technologically advanced superpower the world had ever seen. The citizens believed Rome was eternal. They believed their military might, their vast trade networks, and their reserved currency could never be broken. But beneath the surface, the rot had already begun. Fast forward to 1914. The British Empire ruled over a quarter of the globe. The sun literally never set on its territory. Yet, within just 4 decades, that global hegemony was completely shattered, reduced to a small island nation struggling with debt. Every great superpower follows the exact same life cycle. A predictable mathematical trajectory of birth, expansion, peak, decay, and ultimate collapse. Legendary historians and macroeconomists have mapped this life cycle into 5 distinct stages. And right now, the data, SUGGESTS, that the United States hasn't just entered the downward slope, it has officially crossed the threshold into stage 5, the final stage. In this video, we are going to dissect the 5 stages of empire collapse. We will look at the exact mechanisms that destroyed the greatest civilizations in history, examine the terrifying parallels happening right now in modern society, and reveal what the final stage means for the future of the world. To understand how an empire dies, we must first look at how it is born. Stage 1 is the age of pioneers. Every superpower begins with a group of people who are desperate, disciplined, and radically ambitious. They're usually emerging from the ashes of a previous conflict, or they're settling a new frontier. In this stage, society values tangible wealth creation, hard work, and raw meritocracy. Think of early Rome after the Punic Wars, or America in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. During stage 1, the collective mentality is unified. People are willing to sacrifice individual comfort for long-term national progress. There is minimal bureaucracy. The government is lean. The currency is backed by something of real substance, like gold or silver, and the nation produces far more than it consumes. Because they produce real value, they begin to trade with the rest of the world. They build roads, ships, and supply chains. This productivity creates a massive influx of real wealth. But prosperity breeds complacency. When a nation becomes incredibly successful, it transitions into the second phase of its life cycle, the age of affluence and commercial expansion. In this stage, the pioneer spirit fades, replaced by the merchant class. The empire becomes the undisputed center of global trade. Because its economy is the strongest, its currency naturally becomes the global reserve currency. This gives the empire a superpower that no one else has: the ability to borrow money more cheaply than any other nation on Earth. For America, this peak crystallized after World War II. The Bretton Woods Agreement established the US dollar as the world's anchor. The nation was wealthy, optimistic, and seemingly invincible. But this is exactly where the trap is set. When an empire becomes insanely wealthy, it stops focusing on making things and starts focusing on managing things. This brings us to stage 2, the age of intellectualism and financialization. In the early days, wealth was built by engineers, builders, and farmers. But in stage 2, the smartest minds in society no longer go into production. They go into finance, law, and administration. The economy shifts from a manufacturing powerhouse to a service and financial economy. Instead of creating physical products, the empire figures out how to make money simply by moving money around. At the same time, the empire's global footprints grow too large. To protect its vast trade networks, it must build a massive, unprecedented military apparatus. Rome built fortresses across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Great Britain established naval bases in every ocean. And the United States built over 750 military bases in at least 80 countries around the world. Historians call this imperial overreach. Maintaining a global military empire is astronomically expensive. Eventually, the taxes collected from the citizens are no longer enough to pay for the military, the expanding government bureaucracy, and the lifestyle that the citizens have become accustomed to. So, what does the empire do? It can't cut spending, because that would mean giving up its global dominance. And it can't raise taxes too high without causing a revolution. The only option left is to cheat. They begin to debase their currency. In ancient Rome, emperors literally melted down silver coins and mixed them with cheap copper, allowing them to mint more coins out of the same amount of precious metal. In the modern world, we don't melt coins. We use central banks to print digital money out of thin air through quantitative easing. This brings us to a critical turning point. The empire enters stage 3, the age of decadence and bread and circuses. When money is printed out of thin air, it creates an illusion of permanent wealth. But in reality, it causes massive wealth inequality. The people closest to the printing press, the elites, the banks, the large corporations get unimaginably rich. Meanwhile, the average citizen watches their purchasing power evaporate as the cost of living skyrockets. To keep the population from revolting, the ruling class employs a tactic as old as civilization itself: panem et circenses, bread and circuses. The phrase was coined by the Roman poet Juvenal. He noted that as long as the Roman government provided the masses with free grain and spectacular, violent entertainment in the Colosseum, that people would remain distracted and complacent, entirely ignoring the collapse of their society. Look around today. We see the exact modern equivalent of bread and circuses. Massive, multi-billion-dollar entertainment industries, social media algorithms engineered to keep us hooked on short-form dopamine hits, and endless reality television, combined with cheap, ultra-processed, subsidized food and government stimulus programs, the populace is kept entirely distracted. During this stage of decadence, the core cultural values that built the empire completely dissolve. Discipline, sacrifice, and long-term planning are replaced by narcissism, instant gratification, and cynicism. Education systems begin to decline. In late-stage Rome, intellectual debate shifted away from science and philosophy towards superficial rhetoric and virtue signaling. When a society is deeply distracted by entertainment and deeply divided by wealth inequality, it loses its collective identity. The internal social fabric begins to tear, leading directly into stage 4. Stage 4 is the age of fracturing. This is the moment where the empire's internal contradictions become too loud to ignore, because the currency has been debased. Inflation begins to eat away at the middle class. The gap between the ultra-rich and the rest of society becomes a canyon. This economic pain breeds intense political polarization. The society splits into hostile, warring factions. People stop viewing their political opponents as neighbors with different ideas. They begin to view them as existential enemies. Compromise becomes impossible. The political system becomes entirely paralyzed, unable to solve basic, fundamental problems. Government institutions, the courts, the legislature, the agencies lose all public trust. They are seen as corrupt systems designed only to protect the elites. We saw this in Rome during the era of the Gracchi brothers, where political violence became normalized in the streets. We saw this in the French Empire right before the Revolution. As internal chaos peaks, the infrastructure of the empire begins to physically rot. Roads crumble, bridges fail, and basic services decline because the government is spending all its money on servicing its massive debt and maintaining its foreign military commitments. Let's look at the hard data for the United States today. As of Arlene Arlix, the U.S. national debt has surged past $34 trillion, growing by an unsustainable $1 trillion every few months. The interest payments alone on this debt are now outpacing the entire national defense budget. Think about that. America is now spending more money just paying interest to its creditors than it spends on its entire global military apparatus. When a nation reaches the point where it must borrow money just to pay the interest on the money it previously borrowed, it has entered a mathematical death spiral. There is no historical precedent of an empire recovering from this point. The stage is set. The final domino is ready to fall. Welcome to Stage 5. Stage 5 represents the final phase of the cycle, the era of systemic realignment. It is important to understand that this transition rarely occurs as a sudden, dramatic event. Rather, it is a gradual, compounding rebalancing of global architecture. It happens when the foundational frameworks that supported the superpowers, global dominance, begin to naturally decentralize. For decades, international partners accept the dominant nation's currency because it represents stability, institutional trust, and liquid financial markets. However, when that nation faces persistent structural deficits, domestic polarization, and an expanding monetary supply, external confidence begins to adjust. Global markets naturally seek diversification to mitigate risk. This is the structural shift we refer to as de-dollarization. If we look at the macroeconomic landscape today, this process is visibly underway. The BRICS framework, consisting of major emerging economies, is actively expanding its membership, integrating key commodity-producing nations, and developing independent cross-border payment mechanisms. Simultaneously, central banks across the globe are optimizing their balance sheets by reducing foreign debt holdings and increasing their reserves of tangible assets like gold. When a currency's absolute dominance moderates, the domestic economy must adapt to a new reality. Without the unique advantage of an undisputed global reserve currency, capital costs rise, and the nation is forced to prioritize its domestic commitments over expansive global strategies. This leads to a natural reduction of the empire's global footprint, scaling back international presence to focus on stabilization at home. The global order transitions from a unipolar system where a single power defines the rules of commerce to a multipolar reality, where multiple regional hubs manage global trade and diplomacy collaboratively. When we analyze the current data from structural debt loads to shifting international trade alliances, it becomes clear that the modern economic landscape aligns closely with the characteristics of Stage 5. The global balance of power is reorganizing. But history also teaches us a comforting truth. The end of an empire is not the end of the world. When the Roman Empire collapsed, life went on. When the British Empire receded, it paved the way for a new era of global innovation. The collapse of an empire is simply a reallocation of wealth and power from those who became complacent to those who are productive. The question is not whether the system will change. The question is, what are you doing to prepare for the shift? In times like these, real assets, tangible skills, self-reliance, decentralized technologies, and physical commodities become the ultimate life rafts. The pioneers of the next era are those who see the writing on the wall today and adapt before they are forced to. History has given us the blueprint. The stages are clear. The timing is up to us. If you found this analysis valuable, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Do you think Stage 5 is completely irreversible? Or can the system still be saved? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next breakdown.